regions and people. Latin America. Spatial inequality in Mexico City, from shacks to skyscrapers. Think about a city you know or have recently visited. In your worksheet, draw and label some of the city's main features, including important buildings and major landmarks. Many cities are economic and cultural centers. At the same time, many cities have problems such as air pollution and poverty. In this lesson, you will explore Mexico City and the benefits and problems that are associated with a high population. Essential questions and geoterms. As we read the introduction in the student text, think of 4 adjectives that might describe life in Mexico City. Use information from the reading and the photograph to support your answer. Introduction. Ana Romero lives in a poor part of Mexico City. She and her family of 6 share a simple 2-room house made of concrete blocks, corrugated metal, and scraps of wood. There is no glass in the windows, and there is no running water. The Romeros must walk to a water tap they share with their neighbors. 6 days a week, Ana travels by bus to her job as a maid for the Alba family. The Albas live on the other side of Mexico City, in a beautiful 15-room house with a large garden and swimming pool. To Ana, the Alba home seems like a castle. The Albas pay Ana less than $15 for a 12-hour day of cleaning, cooking, and doing laundry. At 7 o'clock p.m., as the Albas sit down to a big meal of chicken, meat, or fish, Ana begins her journey home to cook rice and beans for her family. The Albas and Romeros live just 15 miles apart in the same city, but in some ways, they live in different worlds. The contrast between their 2 ways of life is an example of spatial inequality, or an unequal distribution of wealth or resources over a geographic area. It means that some places within that area are richer or poorer than others. Mexico City offers many examples of spatial inequality. In this lesson, you will learn about the growth of Mexico City as an urban area. You will read about the causes and effects of the city's rapid growth. You will also learn about the spatial inequality that has resulted from the city's expansion. Examine this graphic organizer. On your worksheet, jot down some observations you make about it. What do you see? Besides color, what are similarities among the divisions on the map? What are some differences? What are some similarities among the photographs? And what are some differences? What relationship might exist between the map and the photographs? This map shows Mexico City, the capital of Mexico. Mexico City is divided into areas called delegaciones, which are shown here in different colors. Some are wealthy, but others are very poor. Keep this spatial inequality in mind as we try to answer the essential question. Why does spatial inequality exist in urban areas? On your worksheet, brainstorm some ideas that could possibly answer this question. Keep the essential question in mind as we continue our lessons. Now let's read Lesson 1, the geographic setting. Mexico City, one of the world's largest cities in population, is located in a highland basin called the Valley of Mexico, at about 7,000 feet above sea level. The valley is surrounded by mountains and has a mild climate and rich soil. The Valley of Mexico has been an important place of settlement since ancient times. A city of wonders, the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. The first settlers in the Valley of Mexico arrived thousands of years ago. At the time, several large, shallow lakes covered the valley floor. Small cities eventually grew up around these lakes. In 1325, a group known as the Aztecs settled on an island in Lake Texcoco and found a city called Tenochtitlan. The Aztecs were great warriors, and by conquering other groups, they created a mighty empire, with Tenochtitlan as its capital. By the time the Spanish arrived in 1519, Tenochtitlan had become one of the greatest cities in the world, with an estimated population of around 200,000 people. Up to 1 million people lived in the Valley of Mexico. Tenochtitlan was a city of wonders. One Spaniard said it was like an enchanted vision from a fairy tale. Great pyramids and temples towered above the city, and fine palaces and homes lined its streets and plazas. Many canals crossed the island, and 3 causeways or raised roads connected the island to the shore. A huge market sold exotic goods from throughout the Aztec Empire. The people of Tenochtitlan enjoyed a high standard of living, a term that refers to people's overall level of comfort and well-being. City residents had plenty of food from farming, fishing, and trade, and an aqueduct brought fresh water into the city from the surrounding hills. The houses in Tenochtitlan were well built, and people lived in clean, orderly neighborhoods. A blend of old and new. The Plaza of 3 Cultures shows the mix of cultures that makes up Mexico City today. The stone platforms in this photograph are Aztec ruins. The church was built by the Spanish, and the office buildings represent modern Mexico. A bustling national capital, Mexico City. In 1521, Spain conquered the Aztec Empire, destroying Tenochtitlan and building a new city called Mexico City in its place. Over time, Mexico City became one of the most beautiful cities in the Americas. Some 300 years later, in 1821, Mexico won its independence from Spain. Mexico City became the capital of the new country and continued to grow slowly. By the 1950s, the city was a blend of modern and historic buildings, and its broad avenues and tree-filled parks made it a pleasant place to live. Today, Mexico City remains the center of Mexican life, but it is no longer the graceful city of old. In the past 50 years, urbanization, or city growth, has increased at a rapid rate. In 1970, the city had more than 8 million people. 10 years later, it had almost doubled its population. There are now more than 21 million people in Mexico City's metropolitan area, which includes the city and its suburbs. A key factor in Mexico City's growth is migration from rural parts of the country to the city. Many people have relocated to the capital because of rural decline or increasing poverty in the countryside. Life in rural areas is hard, but for many people, the city has become a difficult place to live too, as you will see. Here we have a map of Mexico City. What are some things that you can observe from this map? Write them down on your worksheet. Check for understanding. Drag and drop the true statements onto the image. The true statements in this: we have rural decline encouraged many people to relocate to the city. The Aztecs built their capital on what is now Mexico City. And a key reason why Mexico City has grown is because of migration from rural Mexico to the cities of Mexico. Drag each term to its correct definition. Number 1. The unequal distribution of wealth or resources in a geographic area so that some places are richer than others. Is that rural decline, spatial inequality, standard of living, or urbanization? The answer? Spatial inequality. Number 2. The movement of people from rural to urban areas, resulting in the growth of urban areas. Is that rural decline, standard of living, or urbanization? The answer? Urbanization. Number 3. Worsening economic conditions in the countryside, including rising unemployment and growing poverty. Rural declines drive migration to cities. Is that rural decline or standard of living? That would be rural decline. And finally, number 4, the overall level in comfort and well-being of a group or a country. People in developed countries generally have a higher standard of living than people in developing countries. Is that standard of living? Well, it's the only one we have left, so it must be. In our next lesson, we will be surveying people in 4 different neighborhoods of varying social classes to learn about their lives. These visits are going to prepare us to write an article for our school's newspaper at the end of our, quote, exchange program. More on this tomorrow.